Hello and welcome to Guidance Review. I'm David Pudwill, and today we're going to be talking about statistical considerations for clinical trials during the COVID-19 public health emergency. This is a guidance document that was released by FDA in June of 2020. So if we go ahead and take a look at just a couple things that would be good for you to take away from today's video. One, on trial integrity, we really want to understand the ability to meet the objectives of the clinical study. And second, in terms of trial objectives, we really want to ensure that your clinical study has the ability to avoid bias in terms of any changes that you're going to make related to the public health emergency. And third, really would like for you to take away today a couple trial mitigation and analysis strategies that you can implement. If we move forward here, we can go ahead and get into the actual guidance document. And we see here docket number. And if we click that link, that'll take us over to regulations.gov. And here we have some information regarding the guidance, some of the history here. And what we can do is we can take a look at some of the comments in the guidance document here, or for the guidance document here. And if we open up some of these comments, we'll see there are 9 results, and these go back to April following the draft earlier publication of the guidance document. So if we open up the comment section here and view all, we'll head over to take a look at 9 results, and these were from an earlier publication of this guidance document. And we see several comments from individuals as well as Veterans Affairs, and a couple other societies and larger groups. So if we get into the actual text of the guidance document, again, we see it's published in June 2020. This particular guidance document is relevant to a number of centers at FDA, as we see here. And we get into the preface. A lot of this, again, is boilerplate, same kind of language that we're going to see in a lot of these COVID-19 public health emergency guidance documents. And we can see here that comments can be submitted, where we just checked those comments out at regulations.gov, and additional copies can be obtained from the FDA. And we can see here that if you have additional questions, you can contact FDA at a couple of these addresses. Now, moving on, we really get into the heart of the guidance document here. We see the introduction, again, mostly boilerplate language regarding the public health emergency. And we can see that in March 25th of 2020, certain actions were taken regarding the public health emergency, and FDA has determined that prior public participation is not feasible or appropriate, and therefore these guidance documents are being implemented immediately in effect. Again, a little bit more background information here. And FDA specifically calls out the conduct guidance notes that the safety of trial participants is paramount and provides recommendations that may help sponsors mitigate the effects of the public health emergency on meeting trial objectives, including recommendations related to documenting protocol deviations and methods of endpoint assessment. And here again, useful information in this front matter. FDA recommends that sponsors consult with the relevant FDA review division. It's generally good advice when considering protocol changes and changes to the statistical analysis plan that may impact the analysis and interpretation of the endpoints. So now, in the first point that we really want to take away from today's video around trial integrity, while prioritizing the safety of trial participants, sponsors, that's us, should proactively plan to address the impact of COVID-19 on the ability to meet the trial objectives. So FDA wants you to consider that modifications to the ascertainment, the acquisition of primary or key secondary endpoints would generally require a protocol amendment or an investigational device exemption supplement. And modifications to the analysis of the primary or secondary endpoints should be reflected in an updated statistical analysis plan before locking the database and before any modifications to unblinded interim analyses. Some of the reason for that is in this second point that we really want to take away from today's video is around reducing bias, not introducing bias into the interpretation of trial findings. And generally, modifications based on information that reveals the magnitude of the treatment effect or information presented by treatment arm have the potential to introduce bias. And here FDA gives an example that stopping a trial before its planned duration based on knowledge of a treatment difference between arms from a previous interim analysis may introduce bias by stopping a trial close to a random high treatment estimate. Histograms and Kaplan-Meier plots may suggest treatment effect information and should be avoided. However, with appropriate safeguards for the integrity of the trial, such as the use of a data monitoring committee, a trial may be stopped for the safety of the participants based on unblinded data. So FDA only wants you to make interim assessments that effectively are going to be to your detriment, as opposed to an interim analysis that you were wildly successful. Then here, FDA also notes that appropriate participant data to consider when making modifications to the trial to address the impact of the public health emergency include summaries pooled over treatment arms, including information on missing data, participant treatment discontinuation or interruptions, participant trial withdrawal and endpoints, and information not specific to individual participants, such as information on site closures and disruptions of the supply of investigational product, may also be appropriate to use when considering modifications to the trial. So now we're going to address the third point you really want to take away from today's video, which is that there are several trial mitigation analysis strategies that FDA has laid out here in this guidance document. And here FDA says to address the impact on evaluating the primary and key secondary endpoints of the trial, FDA provides considerations below for several design and analysis strategies. Multiple strategies may be needed to address the impact of the public health emergency adequately. These design and analysis strategies should be discussed with the relevant FDA review division. So here, number one, as discussed in the conduct guidance, it is important to capture specific information at the participant level describing the context and/or reasons for post-baseline events as they relate to COVID-19, such as discontinuation of treatment, withdrawal from the trial, use of alternative or rescue treatments, missed endpoint ascertainment, and the use of alternative endpoint ascertainment methods. This information may be useful for incorporating into analysis strategies to address potential biases or for performing sensitivity analyses related to the impact of COVID-19. And for sponsors considering stopping a trial and conducting a final analysis, a major consideration is the loss of statistical power from a smaller sample size or less follow-up time than was anticipated. For a blinded trial, a blinded power assessment could be conducted to estimate the power of the modified study. The assessment could use the actual event rates pooled over treatment arms or the observed variability pooled over treatment arms in the completed portion of the trial. And here, number three, stopping a trial earlier than planned or adding interim analyses to the trial may impact the statistical inference. It could be p-values or confidence intervals. As stated above, any modification to the trial, including the original planned analyses, should not be based on data that reveal information on the treatment effect. And here FDA gives a little bit more detail. If a trial had no previous interim analyses and is stopped early, then using the originally planned statistical analysis may be appropriate for the statistical inference, and the actual results may be less statistically significant or have a wider confidence interval than the trial was designed for because of reduced information. It would be fewer endpoint events, for instance. If a trial had no previous interim analyses, it may be possible to add a plan for interim analyses. And for a trial with a prospectively specified interim analysis plan, it may be possible to stop the trial earlier than planned, or to add or modify an interim analysis and still maintain control over type 1 error. And here, number 4, in terms of strategies, a sponsor can consider increasing enrollment after the impact of the public health emergency has passed, as appropriate, over the originally planned enrollment to overcome the loss of information due to the impact of the public health emergency. And similarly, a sponsor can consider extending follow-up to attain more events in an event-driven trial. Sponsors should conduct sensitivity analyses, examining differences in baseline characteristics to post-baseline events, including endpoints and adverse events, between the originally enrolled participants and the additional participants to understand the impact of the change in recruitment, including changes to recruitment location and time of recruitment. And here for the 5th strategy, FDA outlines that sponsors should consider how to approach the analysis of data from participants who are missing endpoint ascertainment or the investigational product was interrupted because of the public health emergency. And here we see some detail here about trials with sites that are closed for a period of time and the closure of the site for a period of time if the closure of a site for a period of time impacts trial-specified treatment for participants such that it is unlikely that any treatment effect can be observed. Then it may be reasonable to exclude participants who were impacted during that period of time. So, and here in the first bullet, FDA goes through details about possibility of removing all participants from closed sites who were scheduled for an endpoint ascertainment from the analysis. And FDA is specifically concerned about you not biasing the findings. And other well-established methods for addressing missing information rely on leveraging available participant information at baseline and post-baseline. And here for a 6th strategy, FDA outlines that modifications to the definition and ascertainment of trial endpoints may be warranted to address the impact on trial integrity and should be discussed with the FDA review division. So some potential modifications for the public health emergency include using alternative ascertainment methods, extending the protocol-defined window of time for performing the endpoint ascertainment, or using an earlier or later planned ascertainment, and for a composite endpoint, including additional and clinically relevant components or removing components that cannot be ascertained, and for a binary endpoint that is based on a continuous or ordinal measurement, using the continuous or ordinal measurement as the endpoint. And here FDA concludes noting that the impact of any change in endpoint definition or ascertainment, either through a change in methods or a change in timing, should be carefully evaluated in sensitivity analyses. In particular, any differences in the ascertainment between trial arms or among participants with different baseline characteristics should be explored. For example, sensitivity analyses should stratify by the method and timing of the endpoint ascertainment. And that wraps it up for this particular guidance document. I just want to go ahead and take an opportunity now to thank you for making it to the end of the video. I really do hope that you found this information informative and particularly useful. And just want again for you to take away 3 key things from today's video. 1, regarding trial integrity, that you should make great pains to ensure your ability to meet objectives. 2nd, in terms of trial integrity, that you should ensure your ability to avoid bias. And 3, hopefully some of these 6 mitigation strategies that FDA has lined out are useful for you in ensuring that you're able to be successful with your clinical trial during this current public health emergency. Again, thank you very much. I'm David Pudwill, and hopefully you enjoyed this guidance review. Look to catch you in the next one. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.